Now, I find it, for a couple of important reasons, very fortuitous that the format for TEDx is for me to walk out here, stand on this red carpet, and do my not to move off of it. One of them is because I'm a physical and health education teacher, and movement is my business. But the second reason is because this red circle is like a giant magnifying glass for my life and career up until this point. So I'm going to ask you to shift your lens a little bit and think about this carpet not as a circle, but let's make it a square. Or you could even think of it as a box that I have struggled to try and fit into. Now, my life has been extraordinary. Now, of that, there is no doubt. I've seen as far north on Earth as you can drive. I've seen hundreds of kilometers of Canada's forests and mountains, thousands of kilometers of life on two wheels, and most importantly, and probably unexpectedly, it's given me the gift of a family, something that I never thought that I would have. So this box has been a bit of a challenge, because a life that's extraordinary all of a sudden has to become awfully ordinary when you think about the walls of our classrooms and our buildings in general. So much so, in fact, that after many years of great mentorship, it was time for the call out for teachers to take on student teachers. And after receiving such mentorship, I walked down to the office, name in the hat, and I said, I'll happily take one to give back a little bit. Well, it was about a week later that I got called down to the office, and they said, hey, Wilson, thanks so much for offering up to take a student teacher, but we think you're a little bit too far outside the box to work with new teachers. And I always remember that stung a little bit, because here I was trying to connect with kids and make authentic connections, and yet they wanted new teachers to not be exposed to that. Now, it's been a long day, and I'm going to ask you to authentically participate. I need you to help me work our way through the talk, and it's going to start here. What I need you to do is I need you to close your eyes, and I want you to try and create an image in your mind of somebody who's either demonstrated resilience to you or maybe offered words to you that helped you become resilient. So I'm going to give you about 3 seconds. Now, hopefully that elicited a little bit of a physical reaction, maybe a warmth or a kindness. It could have even been a higher functioning response. But my argument is going to be that I believe it's the relationship that you had with that person that was more significant than the event that they showed you resilience in or the words that they gave you. Now, I'm no expert on resilience. I'm not going to stand up here and pretend to be one. So let's be really clear about what we're talking about. By definition, the capability of a strained body to recover its size and shape after deformation, caused especially by compressive stress, or an ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. I can't imagine there's a person in this room that wouldn't want to see this quality in all of the youth that we're teaching, or people we're working with in our communities, or even members of your business. And wouldn't we want to see this in ourselves? If you've ever been in a staff room and the photocopier goes down, you see a lack of resilience. Now, my extraordinary life has given me great access to people who can demonstrate more resilience than one would ever hope to see. From overcoming mental illness, to being so committed to something that they literally live in a Toyota, to changing the shape of how we teach and instruct and help people access, to overcoming injuries, or to developing and taking a vision that is so profound it can't be understood, and they have to go out on their own to develop it. And I believe it's because of this. This is an ethos that we live our lives by, this concept of ride or die. Now, for us in here, what does ride or die mean? Well, what it is, it's a chips-in mentality. Every day you have the opportunity to wake up and decide, I'm going to push my chips in the middle. I might win, and I might lose, but it's worth it. And every once in a while, you come across a character in your life that absolutely blows the doors off of all the boundaries or all the expectations that you may have about something. And Jordy is one of those people. Over many years, all of us who love Jordy have witnessed him take hits that nobody should get up from. And to be entirely honest, we've wished that he wouldn't get up, that life would show him that he needs to slow down. But that's not the big bear. All he knows how to do is pick himself back up to create moments of beauty like this. Now, before you ask, yes, he did land, but not after crashing the first 2 times. Okay? So, this extraordinary life has been fairly unique. So now how do we bring it to our classrooms and our hallways? How do we take the kids that walk through those doors every day and start to work with them on this? Well, just as maybe those extreme examples of resilience are there, I believe examples of resilience are in the people around us every single day. And it's those relationships that allow us to start making connections in the subtlest of ways to start to foster it. Now, I'm going to draw your attention to this young fella on the left there. All right? That's Inkster, one of my oldest mentors and somebody who I cherish deeply. He and I have hiked for hundreds of kilometers with hundreds of kids across a historic backpacking trip we do called the Harrison Hike. And on one particular day, one of our hikers had a life or death situation, and I was responsible for their care. After many hours away out of the field dealing with that, I made my way back into the field to join the group just as it was getting dark. One of my other responsibilities on that hike was to put a costume on and do a Gold Rush character around the fire for the kids. Old Gus Chiggins. Now, I was on the bus, and all I wanted to do when I got back was just take my boots off. It had been a long day. And Inkster climbed up on the bus with a bowl of food that he had left over from dinner for me, and boy, did I need it. It wasn't anything he said, it was the look that he gave me. He didn't expect me to put on my gear and go out and do Gus Chiggins, and there certainly was no demand for it. But the look that he gave me told me that I had the ability to. And it was because of the relationship that Inkster and I have formed over the years that that's all it took. And we have that ability to give that to the kids that we see every single day. The power of a look, saying, cowboy up, get out there and get it done, which is exactly what I did, and I'm so grateful for that moment. Now, how do we start to do this then? Where does this start for us? Well, I strongly believe it starts here. Once again, I'm no expert, but let's look at the definition. Capable of being physically or emotionally wounded, open to attack or damage, to be assailable. Now, before you all jump up and run out of here thinking of ways to be emotionally wounded, right, let's understand why we need to do it. There's a strong argument that kids haven't changed. Kids have always been kids. I strongly disagree. I think that kids are changing and being exposed to things at such an exponential rate that the only hope we have to start to make the connections to understand their world is to create vulnerability. Because when before in our schools have we ever seen this? Now, before you say, well, there's been smoke pits in every school, I agree. I may have spent some time in one in my youth. It was always good to know the tough kids, right? But when before have kids ever been able to send a group text to 12 of their friends where they're going to say, we're going to meet in this bathroom in our buildings during class time to do that? We can't catch them all, and we shouldn't try. What we can do, though, is make our spaces vulnerable enough and safe enough for that kid that they can come in, know it's safe and non-judgmental, so then we can start to chip away at the indifference. Are you ready to go here? This world is so deep, and believe me, I know because I'm interested. I'm trying to understand this space, and yet it is so deep that I can't connect with that kid. But can I make it okay for him to sit in my space and do a little bit of that if he meets me on my ground? Because when we get this young fella coming through the door, we cannot afford to have our guard up. That space needs to be vulnerable for him so that his vulnerability can start to be shared. Now, I'm going to go back to the first year in my career, and I was a substitute teacher in a Math 9 class. You want to talk vulnerability? There it is. Lord knows I couldn't do the math that day in any way, shape, or form. My only hope was to move up and down the aisles, give some high fives, make some connections with kids, until I got to one student who the other kids had pushed their desks physically away from. Now, her appearance was quite disheveled, but most notably, she had taken a bottle of whiteout, a pack of markers, and a highlighter, and decorated her entire arm. So, a kid like all the rest, I rolled up, I said, hey, how are you? And she honestly looked at me like I had two heads. Like, who is this guy talking to me, and why is he bothering? I said, boy, I sure like the design you did with the blue on your arm. Let me know if there's anything you need. That was the end of our interaction. I'm standing at the door giving high fives like I normally do. She just walked right on by, not a surprise. Fast forward 2 weeks, I'm back as a substitute teacher in the PE department, much more comfortable, and there's a knock on the door as there is about 600 times a day. I walk over to the door, pull the door open, and there she is, standing in front of me. Now, to say I was taken aback would be an understatement. She looked me dead in the eyes and she said, "I don't want to hurt myself anymore." Now, as a first-year teacher, every alarm bell goes off, and you're like, disclosure, who do I go to? All I could think to say to her was, "I don't want you to do that either. Let's see what we can do about that." And early in my career, it dawned on me that I was vulnerable enough with her to say hello. That gave her an opportunity to be vulnerable enough with me to say, "I need you. I need help." And that's the power of the simplest form of relationships to help build resilience. Now, I need you to close those eyes again. This is when I'm going to be happy. I want you to create an image in your mind of a partner. Perhaps a partner you have, could be a partner you've had, could even be a partner you hope to have if you play your cards right. All right? I want you to create that and just let that sit for a second and see how it feels. Now, you can open your eyes if you're ready. And here's why I want us to have that person in our mind. Think about the complexities of that relationship. The good, the bad, the downright ugly. If it's not a partner, maybe it's a crew that you've been rolling with for many years. They chose us, and we chose them, hopefully. But now think of the students that come through our doors. It's not a choice. We didn't choose them. And in some cases, they certainly didn't choose us. So then how do we start to create a relationship with somebody who may not even want to be there? Well, here's where I believe it starts. Once the space is safe for those kids to come in, and you've shown them that you're open to them, now it's time to ride or die. Now it's time to push your chips in and do the work right beside them. Now, in my job as a PHE teacher, that's quite easy to do. All I have to do is be willing to sweat and grind and leave a piece of myself on the floor right beside there with them. But in your math class, or your Spanish class, or your science lab, how are you extending yourself to show them that you're willing to do the work? Because if you do, I promise it's worth it. Because you end up with a really, really strong sense of community that's made up of kids that would probably never, ever talk to each other outside your space. This is a really diverse group of kids that have no business sweating and literally giving themselves to the floor right there beside each other. Yet in our world, we've created an environment where one will help the other when it's necessary. Now, if we're lucky enough in our career, we get to see a fellow like the guy on my right side with the vest on there. And that's a youngster who's come back for 3 years after to sweat and grind with us. And I've been so fortunate to be able to be an influence in his life. And I've been able to watch this youngster overcome adversity that no child should ever have to be exposed to fulfill his lifelong dream. Now, maybe it's a bit more subtle. Maybe it's 6 years after graduation, you find one of these in your letterbox. Man, I'm just going to jump into it. There are very few people that I credit with not only being the reason I finished high school, but also the reason I'm still alive. And you are one of those people. I'm not sure that you realize what a profound effect you've had on me, but I really need you to know and know why. All I did for this kid was give him a space where if he needed to, he could eat. I had food for him. If he needed to sleep, he could sleep. If he needed support academically, I could provide it for him. We don't understand the subtle little things and the impact that we can have on kids if we're willing to do them. He was not a good student, but he was just a kid who needed somebody to watch out for him. And it was through that chipping away at that indifference that he and I were able to build a relationship, and every once in a while he'd let me give him a little advice, a little advice, a little advice, and now, many years later, he's doing quite well. So, before you roll your eyes at the word, because it's being pushed pretty hard these days, this I truly believe is a strong piece of the puzzle. Mindfulness. Once again, not an expert, but the quality or state of being conscious or aware of something. Because who wouldn't want to see a student who in the present moment could calmly acknowledge and accept one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations? Imagine if we could do that for ourselves in every moment. We don't get to know their stories. And in some cases, they don't get to know ours. But I firmly believe that there's a large majority of kids coming through the door feeling like that. Now, this could be taken a couple of different ways. Is this somebody who's falling into the deep end or who could be drowning? Or is this somebody who's having something happen to them in their life that is so overwhelming that they can't even think about the sensations, yet alone the implications of what it could cause? If we can just create a space that's vulnerable and we're willing to go that mile and meet them on in a relationship place, we can start to see what layers they're working with. Now, last time I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes one more time, and I want you to see if you can come up with an experience that you've had in your life that you can still actually feel. Now, if you can't come up with one, that's okay. Be kind. It's a big ask. But I want to share one with you. All the spirit of the Harrison hike.
Boom! Checka! Boom!
Boom! Chicka! Boom!
Boom! Checka! Boom!
Boom! Chicka! Boom!
Hey, hey!
Hey, hey!
My!
My!
That's it!
That's it!
Good night!
Good night!
Get out of here.
Now, when I watch this video that I've seen many, many times before, I can literally feel the goosebumps underneath my sleeves because I can hear Gowan Creek off to my left, and I can hear the echo in the trees that were surrounding us. Now, even though this experience is quite immersive, it was over 6 days that we spent time with 75 grade 10 kids. You have opportunities to start to create moments like this in the spaces that you're in every day. We all have people. We have the benefit of our adulthood to allow us to have people in our lives. We might be the people for the kids that we see every day. So let yourself feel that possibility. And if you're not ready to yet, that's okay. Just create a space that will allow the process to start. Because when an email or a phone call comes into a kid and they have the opportunity to go on an adventure and live a little bit of life, it'd be awesome if they'd come back and tell you that you were one of the things that helped them say yes to that. Thank you.